Hello and good morning. Is it morning still there?
It just turned afternoon.
Oh,
Good
hello. Good afternoon, Deborah. Yes. Hello. Good afternoon. How are you
afternoon,
doing
Angela.
today?
Good. How are you doing today on this
Yes,
Monday?
yes, I'm doing great. We're a bit later than normal, right? But I'm doing amazing. And thank you for being here with me today. And I'm very happy that we can do this again. I believe we're meeting eighth time today. Yes.
We are.
So, yeah, so let's do this. So, today we would like to talk about the communication shift and is directing to connecting.
Yes.
Uh, we all have to go through the stages, through the shift stages. It's depending where we are. And sometimes we have to, sometimes we have to do things that people don't like. Sometimes we have to fire them. We have to just let them go. Or sometimes we have to just let them go because they've been so long with us that they ready to go and build their own ladders, as we said last week, right?
Mhm.
And today, when we're going to talk about communication shift, uh, I will start maybe with the quote I really liked is you
Mhm.
don't lead by hitting people over their heads. That's assault, not leadership. Leadership. And I love it. And I love it. Like actually you don't do that, we don't do it. We don't do it. And so that's very important not to be a director but be a connector. However,
and that was
before
from and that was
sorry.
from the president, Dwight
Yes.
Eisenhower, the president of the United States, Eisenhower.
Oh yeah,
That's a
you
pretty
see,
good
that's something
quote.
important I didn't say, mention. Yes.
Uh-huh.
So I think he knows what he's saying, right?
Hope so.
But however, sometimes it depending on us. Uh, if you are people pleaser, and I can relate to that so much. I am people pleaser. Many times I'm making things to just make people happy. And if you are people pleaser, sometimes you have to go from connecting back to directing. You have
Mhm.
to learn. Uh, you have to learn how to direct people. But the important part of this is that you should not stay there too long. And
Mhm.
it's very important to ask yourself a question if you are communicating with people because you communicate what you think that they want or actually what they need. That's very important which one it is, because if you're doing them what they want, I think it's the time when we have to rethink and go back to directing for a little bit and then come back and reconnect. Because if you don't want to if you don't want to if you don't want your people to feel uncomfortable, and I'm guilty of that, then you just have to go back. And why is that? Because we are natural connectors, right? We are natural connectors with that. So
Mhm.
because we are natural connectors, that's what we do. We don't want to reject. We don't want to deal with rejection. So we make people happy, and that's something. When we have to get to the point and discover if we are there, then yes, go back. Don't stay too long, and they come back and reconnect with people again. Does that make
Mhm.
sense, Deborah? I kind of found this very important to mention because we should go from directing to connecting. But if you are connecting and not don't know how to direct people because you are people pleaser, you have to go back there, but not for too long. What do you
Mhm.
think?
I think it's a great example. There's an example in the book that talks about a football coach, and it really is moving between directing and connecting. So when you think about directing, you're going to think about things like authority. Um, you're doing all the talking. It's a top-down approach. You're making a lot of assumptions when you're directing because it's not collaborative, and then you're giving answers, and it's kind of all about your agenda. But when you're connecting, it's more collaborative. You're really listening and empowering people, trying to understand where they're coming from by asking those questions. And now it's instead of, your agenda, it's our agenda. So the example in the book is about a football coach that on halftime uh, went back into the locker room and wrote these 3 questions on the board. What did we do wrong in the first half? What did we do right in the first half? What did we do wrong? What do we need to change? And sat back and let the players get up there and write the answers. Like they kind of worked together and wrote the answers. And then that enlightened the coach to see what they were thinking instead of just coming in and assuming what went wrong. They actually, he actually worked with them and found out what their perspective was, and then connected with them, and then went back to a little directing to get them back in for the second half. So there is a back and forth, but it's just making sure that you're intentional about doing that and kind of putting the ball back in the other person's court when it's, when it's appropriate. But usually when you're doing it in a more collaborative way, you're going to get more results, and you're also going to understand where people are coming from. So I do agree, and I love that. Thank you for asking.
And that's important, right? Where people are coming from. We have to know. If you want to have a great team that connects, we have to know their opinion, right? So Deborah, what is your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway was the encouragement. And there's so much in this chapter that, that needs to be done when you're thinking about being in a leadership role or just communicating with different people or friends. But the one that I liked the most was encouragement. Encouragement gives oxygen to somebody's soul. It really does. And there's an example that talks about how even like really high profile authors, like the person that wrote The Hobbit and also Lord of the Rings, they needed encouragement. They were ready to give up. And so they would meet, like 3 of them would meet, 3 authors, they would meet once, I think it was once a month, to talk about what they were doing. It might've been once a week, actually, talk about what they were doing to try and brainstorm and then encourage each other. And C.S. Lewis was one of the authors that was working with the person that wrote Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And he said he couldn't even get through a chapter, like he was ready to give up. But C.S. Lewis kept saying, it's just one more chapter. Look at all the places look at everything you've done so far, and kept him going. And pretty much he said, had it not been for Lewis, he wouldn't have written Lord of the Rings. And he feels like he just owes him so much because several times he wanted to throw in the towel. And each time Lewis would say, what's your next chapter? Don't give up now. Just keep going. So I love the encouragement because everybody needs it. And they really do. And it doesn't matter how good you think they're doing, you may not know what's really going on. So that's really about the connecting piece. It's not directing people. It's really connecting with them and seeing where they are, getting in there where they are, like kind of getting next to them, just sitting alongside with them and seeing what they're feeling and what their perspective is, and then giving them some insight from your perspective, but understanding where they are. Because if you just go in and direct without really knowing, then you might be telling them something that they don't need, or it's just not going to resonate. So if you want them to, you want something to really resonate with something and someone and have it be helpful, seeking to understand is one of the key factors. So that's what I like. What about you? What was your
Yes, I understand. And encouragement, as you said, everybody needs encouragement. And sometimes, even if you do this encouragement, people feel that you care. And that's something very important. And I think for me is the curiosity, and always curiosity was, and asking people questions. I had to stop for myself, have a monologues, and I had to start asking people questions. And I really, many times, the first time people would talk to me, and the second they would run away. Oh my gosh, this is the one that talks a lot again. And especially leaders, being a leader, often leaders assume that they know everything, that they know best. But I believe that in asking question, there is a power in asking question. And curiosity is a chance to establish a common ground. And I also think John Maxwell said, or Mark Cole, I'm not sure, that of course, as I mentioned, leader think that they know everything, but actually great leaders value other people and value what they think, what other people think. And that's why it's important to ask the questions. And the question is a power. I think power in question is very it's just sometimes it's impossible to explain. But if we ask people their opinion, they feel included. If we ask people what they feel that they are in our team and they will give us more if we do that. We have to learn how to ask questions, of course. This is a process, and I think John Maxwell is giving a few questions, what questions to ask, but this is a process. We have to learn how to ask questions. But I think the question, there's a power in asking questions, and I feel this. You as a leader, you should always think and care what other people around you think and what their opinion is on things. And I think this is very strong because. Yeah, I think it's very strong. People know that you care them, that you care about them, and that's for me a power. That's power itself.
Mm-hmm. It certainly is. And like you said, when you're curious about other people, you're really trying to find out what's going on with them and seeing where they're coming from. Because when people, when they first come to you with something, usually it's like 4 levels below what they're talking about is what is really going on. So the curiosity will get you there. And I always think about the 5 whys. Like if you ask in your mind, why is this, why is that, down to 5 whys, you usually get down to what the real deal is. And that's where you're going to connect and create the common ground that you were talking about. So I loved talking about this topic with you. I know it's short because we only have so much time, but we want to leave you with a challenge for those of you that are listening today to really think about whether or not you're directing, because when you're directing, it's a one-way street and people follow, but it's a one-way street. When you're connecting, then it's two-way and everybody wins. Everyone's learning something. And this is something that Albert Einstein said, and I love this quote: a person first starts to live when he can live outside of himself, meaning that it's more than what you think. It's about, with collectively what's going on with everyone and what they think too. And I think we kind of drove that home this time. So think about that, when you're in either your work environment or your family life or out with friends. Think about like whether or not you're directing, catch yourself, because it's hard when you're involved in the moment that you might not be, thinking about it. But if you're intentional about looking at the conversation and seeing, are you directing? Are you really connecting? I challenge yourself to try this paradigm shift and see how it works out for you. And let us know. Let us know how it works. Go ahead, Adita.
And if not, and if you think that you are connecting too much and there's not much result or success, I think you have to look into that. Like maybe I have to shift back to directing and then come back, reconnect, reconnect again, because that's also something stops us from amazing things happened.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Back to the football coach.
Exactly.
The football coach will have to direct a little bit, but at the halftime, he lets the players talk about what they did well and what they didn't do well. And then he has a sense of where they are mentally. And then back on the field, he goes back to directing a little bit so that they can follow, but he kind of knows, what's going on with them on the field.
Exactly.
And then he knows kind of what strategy to take to move them forward. So it's been a pleasure talking to you again today, Adita.
Thank you. The same here. Thank you. And I see you next week.
Sounds good. Have a good week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.